back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, January 14th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, as we normally do. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat. If you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, it makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we will recap last night's game to start off the show between the Rams and the Vikings. The Rams winning 27-9. So we'll get into the specifics of that. We will also talk about the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy parting ways. So I know we've talked about the Cowboys recently and McCarthy, and the Cowboys, they, denied other teams to interview him, but now teams are going to get a chance to interview him because they've officially parted ways. Because I thought when that was the case, well, maybe they are going to bring back McCarthy, but that has not happened. They are moving off of him, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll get into recapping the other games that we didn't get a chance to recap yesterday because there were a couple of non-wild card game topics that I wanted to touch on yesterday. So third part of the show, we'll talk about the Packers-Eagles game, Eagles winning that. We'll talk about the Bills-Broncos game. And then in the final part of the show, we will talk about the Texans-Chargers game. So that's what's on tap for today. So let's get into the first topic, which is recapping last night's game between the Rams and the Vikings. And, of course, game was played in Arizona, the home of the Cardinals, and a lot of Vikings fans at this game. There were Rams fans, of course, but this kind of went how I expected in terms of the crowd. But the game, the Rams dominated from start to finish. It was never really close. Now, the last time these two teams met, it was back and forth for a little bit. Then the Rams, they pulled away. They got the win. I just thought, for me personally, that the Vikings were going to come out looking better on both sides of the ball. And I thought, because of just the embarrassment that happened last week in Detroit, I thought they were raring to go for this game. Now, there was a couple of points in the game where I thought the Vikings got a bad break. Mainly when Matthew Stafford, it looked like he fumbled and Blake Cashman returned it for a touchdown. I thought, okay, this is a different game here. But then when they reviewed it, and Stafford even said it after the play happened, you see that he does do some kind of forward pass, forward motion with the ball before, he does some kind of forward motion, and they determined that it was a forward pass, is what I'm trying to say. But, yeah, so the touchdown gets taken away, and then later in the game, the Rams get a defensive touchdown. Darnold fumbles, they return it for a touchdown. Jared Verse, he returns it, and yeah, that's the image you see here, him diving into the end zone for the touchdown. Aaron Donald was actually in attendance for this game last night. The Rams defense, they had quite the day. 2 takeaways of Sam Darnold and the offense. Well, Darnold threw a pick and fumbled. But the big number here is they had on the night 9 sacks. 9 sacks of Sam Darnold. And they were talking about it on the broadcast. At points, he would hold on to the ball too long, but yeah, the Vikings offensive line just could not hold up at times either against this Rams pass rush. They were relentless. They made Sam Darnold's night painful. And the Vikings just couldn't get anything going. The one touchdown they had, that made it, I forget what it made. Well, let me look. It was the TJ Hawkinson touchdown. That made it, I think, 20. Oh, yeah, no, that made it 27-9. And that's what ended up being the final score. That was the final scoring play of the game. They went for 2, they didn't get it. And that was in the third quarter. There was no scoring in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, maybe that gave Vikings fans a little bit of hope that maybe they could pull something miraculous off, but it didn't materialize. And like I said, it was just a long night for that offense once again. Sam Darnold was not great. Vikings really couldn't run the football. I mean, their leading receiver ended up being TJ Hawkinson, who had 5 receptions for 64 yards. Justin Jefferson had 5 for 58. Jalen Naylor, Darnold missed him on a throw that maybe, Troy Aikman said on the broadcast that maybe he could have taken it to the house had Darnold made the accurate throw, because Naylor was wide open and Darnold just missed him. And then actually on the Hawkinson touchdown, Darnold threw it a little bit behind him. It was a great catch by Hawkinson to be able to corral it, and he ended up scoring. So again, similar to last week, Darnold just missed some throws as well. And yeah, they just could not get anything going. And for the Rams, from start to finish, I mean, there were a couple times where their offense stalled, but that first drive, they went right down the field. Stafford and that offense went right down the field. First drive of the game. That first drive of the game was 7 plays, 70 yards, almost a little over 4.5 minutes of time possession. I mean, right away, first play, 27 yards to Puka Nacua, then another 23 to Higbee. And he had a good game, and then he ended up leaving with a chest injury. So hopefully he's okay for next week when they take on the Eagles. They did go for it. Well, they were lining up to go for it on 4th and 1, and they got a bowler to jump off sides. So that gave him a 1st and goal. And then Stafford connected with Kyron Williams for a 5-yard touchdown. So that made it 7-0. And, they scored on their first 2 possessions. So it was 10-0. Vikings got on the board with a field goal. Like I said, Darnold threw a pick, but that didn't lead to anything. And then, like I said, the fumble that was returned by Gerard Verse for a touchdown. So that made it 7-3. Vikings then turned it over on downs. They went for it on 4th and 2, and Darnold got sacked. And then the Rams turned that into a touchdown. So, yeah, it was 24-3 at the half. So you kind of figured, yeah, the Vikings are not coming back from this. And it really does make you wonder, and this is a topic of conversation. One of the things we'll be talking about in the offseason is what's going to happen with Sam Darnold. Because these last 2 games, he was not great. The Vikings really just never... I mean, the Lions game was close until the third quarter, and then they pulled away. But the Vikings only kicked 3 field goals. And, once again here, they fell behind early, and they just could not get themselves out of it. And now they're going home. A team that won 14 games this year, they're going home in the first round. And all of their losses, including this one last night, came against the Lions and the Rams. Those are the only two teams that were able to knock them off this year. Against everybody else, they went 14-0. And I know there's going to be conversations about, well, should there be some talk about, changing up the playoff format? I don't think so. Because there's been a lot of complaints about that. I know we've seen that in college, but don't start having these conversations in the NFL, because this happens. This happens. And, we're in the divisional round now. We've seen, number 1 seeds getting knocked off in the divisional round before by wildcard teams. We saw a 9-7 Giants team knock off a 15-1 Packers team in the divisional round. It happens. And this was just a unique circumstance. You had 2 teams that had over 14 wins this year. in the same division. And a third team that won 12. Right, the Packers won 12 games. Either way, the NFC North was a gauntlet this year. So, yeah, that's why you had a 14-3 team make the playoffs. Because there was another team that went 15-2. Well, the Packers went 11-6. My mistake. It was a unique circumstance. So don't be having these conversations of, oh, the Vikings, they should have been home for this game. Well, guess what? Kind of looked like a Vikings home game when you saw all purple in the crowd. So, it is what it is. And look at what the Rams had to deal with. They were talking about it on the broadcast with everything going on in California, the schedule that they had to be on, all the people that they had to bring over from LA to Arizona for this game. It was 400 people. They had to go through a lot. They went through a lot. So, the Vikings should have came ready for this game. And they weren't. From start to finish. The Rams are ready to go, and they're moving on to take on the Eagles once again. And we'll preview that matchup on Friday. Those two teams have met before, and that was the night Saquon Barkley had over 240 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns in that game. So we'll see how they match up against them this time. I think it'll be a different game. Well, obviously because it's being played in Philly now. But I like how the Rams defense is playing, and I kind of figured that the Rams offense was going to come out and play better. I know they weren't putting up points the previous couple weeks, excluding last week because, they were playing their backups. But I knew that they were going to come out and play a better game because, it's the playoffs, and they know what's expected. Matthew Stafford has only lost one game in the playoffs as the Rams starting quarterback, and that was last year against the Lions. Which, if we get those two teams playing each other in the NFC Championship game, I know some people maybe be tired of seeing them play each other because this would be the third time that Stafford would be going back to Detroit to take on the Lions, but I don't care. When those teams play against each other, it's usually a good game. So, sign me up for it. But for the Vikings, just a disappointing end to their season. I mean, 14 games that they won this year. You didn't think they were going to be one and done, but that's what they are. That's what they are. They're going home. And it was a rough weekend for me in the spread pool. So straight up, I was 3-3. In the spread pool, I was 1-5. The only game I won was the Bills. And because I was debating on whether I take the points or not, thankfully, I stuck with the Bills because, they blew out the Broncos. And we'll talk about that game a little later in the show. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. Like I said, Rams, they move on. They will be taking on the Eagles next week. They will be playing them next Sunday on NBC. That game will be at 3 p.m., I believe, Eastern time. So yeah, Vikings go home, and we'll see what happens, what they do with Sam Darnold. Like I said, we'll be talking about that throughout the offseason. So we're going to take our first break now, and then when we come back, we will discuss the Cowboys moving on from Mike McCarthy and what could be their plan going forward, and what McCarthy's plan could be going forward, where he could possibly end up. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to now talk about the Cowboys parting ways with Mike McCarthy. So, like I brought up when I was going over what we would be discussing today, so the Cowboys, they denied teams from interviewing him. And when that happened, I thought that was an indication that, okay, maybe the Cowboys are going to give him another contract and he's going to end up back with Dallas. But that did not happen. And something that was very interesting, before the game last night, Troy Aikman was on with Scott Van Pelt on the pregame show. And this is what he said about the Cowboys. Like, just the Cowboys' job, the head coaching job. And I guess Scott Van Pelt might have said it's a job that maybe individuals would covet. And this is what Aikman said. I love the Dallas Cowboys. I played there for 12 years. I wish them well, but to say that's a coveted job, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that. And that's Troy Aikman saying that. Troy Aikman, who won Super Bowls with the Cowboys. That's very telling. And, it could be because McCarthy might have got sick of who I guess Troy Aikman is referring to without actually saying it, and that's Jerry Jones. McCarthy probably got sick of it. And I guess he wanted out. Maybe that's what happened during those conversations that they were having. I don't know. I don't know what could have happened. But it's just interesting how the Cowboys didn't want anyone interviewing him, and now they let him go anyways. Because I thought, okay, they're going to bring him back. Nope. They're not bringing him back, so he's free to go wherever he chooses. Now, the Bears are a team that he can interview with. I think the Saints as well. Maybe the Jets, because the Jets have interviewed everybody. We'll have to go over their head coaching search because they've interviewed a lot of candidates. So I think McCarthy will find another job. I think he's a good enough coach where he'll be able to find work elsewhere, because you'll take a look at his record with the Cowboys. It's not bad. He made the playoffs 3 out of the 5 years he was there, and the team finished 12-5. They make the playoffs, so I think he's going to find work, but it's just going to be, a matter of who's going to want to bring him in, because it did, he took the year off, 2019, didn't coach anywhere, and then was back in 2020, and in his press conference with the Cowboys, he lied, saying that he watched tape on the Cowboys like every single day or whatever he said, just so he could get the job. But I don't think we're going to see any of that. I think he's going to. I think he will latch on to another team, because I think there are teams out there that need, a proven head coach. And yeah, he might not be the best option because, outside of one Super Bowl with the Packers, not and obviously, coaching Aaron Rodgers for so long, many people are going to just point to, well, you only have your resume because of Aaron Rodgers, but Mike McCarthy helped develop Aaron Rodgers. He did. So, I'm going to defend him in that respect. But yeah, I guess, most people will still say, Rodgers had more to do with McCarthy having the record that he has rather than, it being on him. But anyways, yeah, I think McCarthy will find some work. But we'll have to wait and see. But for the Cowboys now, who will they bring in? Now, I saw some posts on who could be the top candidates, and there was some betting odds that I saw. Kellen Moore, I saw, is possibly the betting favorite to maybe be the next in line to be the Cowboys head coach. Now, right now, he's the OC with the Eagles, and he did spend some time with the Cowboys on the coaching staff, and he also played for the Cowboys as well. And then also Jason Witten as well could be a candidate, which I thought was interesting. But also, Deion Sanders supposedly had some conversations with the Cowboys about the job. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. I think if it's going to be anyone, I mean, I guess of those three people, I guess maybe you go with Deion. But then again, I'm not so sure. And I think it also, a big factor is it's going to come down to, how they handle a relationship with Jerry Jones. Because I don't think you're going to get, like I said, I think Pete Carroll should be at the top of any team's list. If you have a nucleus to build around, because I think he can come in and immediately, change the culture and, lead your team in the right direction. But I don't think a Pete Carroll-Jerry Jones relationship would work. So, like I said, when I see that Kellen Moore could be a candidate or Jason Witten, yeah, that it's because those guys will get along with Jerry. They're not going to be guys that are going to want to have full control over the team, other than coach it, of course. Deion's a little different, in my opinion. But, I mean, if he wants the job, I think you got to consider it. But the other thing, too, is he wants to coach his sons. So, I don't know how that would work. But we'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see if that materializes into anything. But that's just what I've seen. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get a Pete Carroll. And the other candidate would have been maybe Bill Belichick. But again, I just don't know how that relationship would work, even though supposedly I think they have a good relationship, Belichick and Jerry Jones. But, yeah, Belichick was still out there. Maybe he would have been considered. Because, there were reports out there, going into the 2024 season that maybe the only teams he would coach are teams in the NFC East. Obviously that did not happen. But now he's going to be in the college game, and maybe he comes back. Who knows? But yeah, he's not an option unless maybe he changes his mind. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, going to be an interesting offseason for the Cowboys. But I think for me, when you're the Cowboys and you have a roster that's constructed the way it is right now, I don't know if I want to bring in a first-time head coach. That's why, again, I said Pete Carroll, I think, would be the right guy for the job. It's just, it really comes down to the relationship with Jerry Jones, which I don't think it would work. So maybe you bring back Jason Garrett. No, that's not happening. Not happening. I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, I mean, because you got a quarterback that's making $60 million. You got one of the top receivers. You got one of the top pass rushers. And you got some other good players surrounding them as well. You want to bring in a proven head coach, but again, the problem is the control that Jerry Jones has. And that he needs to take a step back. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. And that's what the fan base has wanted for so long. So, I don't know. But I just think that the comments by Troy Aikman are very telling. A quarterback that won Super Bowls with that team. Him saying that on national TV just tells you all you need to know. So the Cowboys are not going to get a proven head coach. A proven NFL head coach. Let's just say that. The way it seems. Because if they go the Deion route, well, Deion is a college coach. He doesn't have NFL coaching experience. If they go with Kellen Moore, He's been a coordinator, not a head coach. And Jason Witten, that's like when the Colts hired Jeff Saturday to be their interim head coach. I don't want to knock Jason Witten. Jason Witten had a great career, but I mean, what kind of experience is he going to bring to the well, at least head coaching experience? Because Jason Witten was a leader on the team, and I get that, and I respect it, but I don't know. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think about this. Do you think that Dion could be the next head coach? Or do you think they're going to go another route? But Dion reaching out to the Cowboys means, he wants the job. But it's just, what's going to happen? Are they going to have to trade Dak and trade up to get Shedeur Sanders? What's going to happen there? I don't know. But something we will have to keep an eye on in the coming weeks here. So the Cowboys are another team that will be looking for a new head coach, and we'll see what happens with Mike McCarthy, where he ends up. Like I said, I think he will get another job at some point. It's just a matter of where. I could definitely see the Saints hiring him. The Bears, they interviewed Pete Carroll. I think that's who you bring in. That's my opinion. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will get into recapping the remaining wild card games that we didn't get to. We'll start off with the Eagles-Packers game, Eagles winning that one. So we'll talk about that when we return. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into recapping the Eagles-Packers game, talk about the specifics of that. So let's get into it. Now, we had two quarterbacks coming in a little banged up. Jalen Hurts, finally cleared concussion protocol. Jordan Love, injured his elbow in the final week of the regular season against the Bears, but he was a full participant in practice. And didn't miss any snaps during the game. But this game just was pretty slow. Well, for the most part. Because the Packers got the ball to start off the game. Keyshawn Nixon fumbles right away. And the Eagles end up recovering. They score a touchdown off of that. However, looking on social media, and even Keyshawn Nixon said it after the game, you could see that he has the ball. He has the ball. And the officials ruled in favor of the Eagles. And also, even on the play, you see helmet to helmet right off the bat. So there should have been a flag, and the Packers should have had the ball to start the game. So that's a 7-point swing right there. And from that point on, it's just... the Packers were still in the game. The defense did a great job of keeping them in the game. But the offense just could not get anything going. Nothing. Jordan Love did not have a good performance. Was not good in this game. Had 3 interceptions in the game. I mean, one of them, it was towards the end of the game. He's just trying to, get something going. But, he had another interception where he didn't see the linebacker, Zach Baum. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if I butchered that. But, he was trying to, I think he was trying to hit Tucker Kraft over the middle, and, there was miscommunication there. So he got intercepted there. And then also, he threw a long pass to Dontavian Wicks, I believe, and that ball was just a little bit underthrown. And Darius Slay, it's like he's playing center field. Like, he's right there, and the ball just hits him right in the chest, and he intercepts that. And it's just, but you know what? Even with those turnovers, I mean, the fumble on the kickoff, they turned into points, but even with those interceptions, the Packers were still in the game. They still had a chance to get something going, but it's just they couldn't. They simply could not. They punted on their first 2 possessions, then there was the first interception. That was to Darius Slay. And then they actually could have put up some points in the second quarter, but Brandon McManus, who's been good for them all year, he missed a 38-yard field goal. So that would have made it 10-3. Then there was the other Jordan Love interception. That was the one to Zach Baun, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize again for messing up his name. But the Eagles didn't turn that into points. The Eagles did not turn the first 2 interceptions into points, and even the missed field goal. They didn't capitalize on that. So it was still 10-0. So, the Packers are still in this thing. Then they made it 10-3, which it should have been 10-6. But then the Eagles, after the Packers finally get on the board, they go 5 plays, 68 yards, and Dallas Goedert, just stiff arms a Packers defender all the way into the end zone for a touchdown. So that made it 16-3. Jake Elliott missed the extra point. But then the Packers responded. They went 9 plays, 78 yards, and this was one of the bright spots of the Packers offense, and really the only bright spot of the Packers offense, and that's Josh Jacobs, who had an incredible year for them. A 32-yard run, well, it turned out to be a 31-yard run, where he just refused to go down, and it looked like he did score on the play, but he got tackled at the 1, but then the next play, he scores. So that made it 16-10. So, like I said, Packers are still in this thing. However, the Eagles, they scored again. They went down the field. Jake Elliott kicked a 30-yard field goal. So that made it 19-10. Packers turned it over on downs. And then the Eagles got another field goal to make it 22-10. And then the final Jordan Love interception where he's just trying to make something happen. Maybe there could have been a defensive pass interference on the play. There wasn't. Trying to hit Bo Melton, but it got intercepted by Quinyon Mitchell. And that was basically it. Now, Saquon Barkley, he could have, scored on the Eagles' drive. He had a 17-yard run, but he ended up taking a knee, and that was it. Looking at the stats for the game, I mean, Jordan Love, 20 of 33, 212 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Josh Jacobs had 81 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Jaden Reed was our leading receiver, 4 receptions for 46 yards. Jacobs had 3 for 40. Dontavian Wicks, 2 for 39. 3 fumbles by the Packers in this game. Only one of them they lost. That was the Keyshawn Nixon kickoff fumble, which maybe shouldn't have been a fumble. Packers defense had 2 sacks of Hurts. And then, speaking of Jalen Hurts, he only went 13 of 21 for 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Saquon Barkley had a very quiet 25 carries for 119 yards. You wouldn't have known because he really didn't have. He maybe had a couple of decent runs in this game, but there was nothing where, I mean, unless he took it to the house on the final play of the game, but there weren't really any big runs for him. So the Packers, I think, did a good job at least containing him to some extent. Devontae Smith, he was their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 55 yards. Dallas Goedert had 4 for 47 and a touchdown. Jahan Dotson got the Eagles on the board. That's who scored the touchdown. to start off the game when the Packers fumbled. He had 1 reception for 11 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, only 1 reception for 10 yards. And, people are making a big deal about him reading a book on the sidelines. And he said he's been doing that all year. But, people are making a big deal out of that. The Eagles defense had 2 sacks of Jordan Love. But the big thing I wanted to talk about is the Packers' injuries. Because they lost, they had Christian Watson out for this game, of course, with the torn ACL. But they lost Romeo Doubs in this game. Got taken out, was evaluated for a concussion. And that, he's had concussion problems this year. You also had Jaden Reed get hurt as well. I think he suffered a dislocated shoulder. So he got hurt. So they were down to, like I said, Bo Melton. Dontavian Wicks ends up, he's usually their number 4 guy. Now he's their number 1 receiver. So you had Bo Melton. And then you still have Tucker Kraft as well, the tight end. But, the Packers were down a ton of wide receivers. Then Josh Myers, their center, gets hurt in this game. A couple of guys on defense got hurt. I mean, they were already missing Jair Alexander. But the Packers suffered a lot of injuries in this game. And on top of that, their quarterback did not play well. And we will talk about his performance more during the week. But, there's a lot of people criticizing Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur as well. And I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. The Eagles, to me, going into this game, they were just a better team. Now, I thought the Packers could at least keep it within, the 4.5 that they were getting. But, yeah, they just could not get anything going offensively. But I also thought, they would come out and they would play a little bit better. But I thought I had the same logic for the Vikings last night and to some extent the Steelers as well, even though the Steelers were getting 9.5 points. But I was wrong. And that's why I went 1-5 in my spread pool this week. I mean, the Packers' defense, they kept them in this game. And if you remember, when this game was played in Brazil, I mean, there was over 50 points scored in the game. Here, it was a low-scoring game. And if you look at the stats for the game as well, I mean, it's not like the Eagles, dominated this game. You look at time of possession, it's about the same. Eagles had the ball for a little over 30 minutes. The Packers had the ball for just about 30 minutes, 29 minutes and 27 seconds. The Eagles had the ball for 30 minutes and 33 seconds. First downs, Packers had 12, Eagles had 16. Third down efficiency, the Packers were 7 for 13 on third down. The Eagles were 2 for 11. Packers had more total yards than the Eagles, and they ran 3 more plays than the Eagles as well. So it's not like the Eagles dominated. Defensively, they did. But, offensively, I mean, they didn't have a huge game, I mean, they got 3 turnovers off of Jordan Love, 3 takeaways, and then on top of that, the fumble on the kickoff. It's just, offensively, the Packers just could not get anything going, and that's been a problem for them in recent weeks. And really the whole year. Is just sometimes they just get off to these slow starts. And you look at the losses on the season, they lost to the Vikings twice, they lost to the Lions twice, and they lost to the Eagles twice. Those are 3 playoff teams. Two of them had 14-plus wins. Well, actually, no, the Eagles had 14 wins too. Yeah, the Eagles had 14 wins, the Vikings had 14 wins, and the Lions have 15 wins. That's who the Packers lost to. And then they also lost to... no, that was it. They just lost to the Eagles, the Lions, and the Vikings. That's it. They beat everybody else. And, some of those games were close. Or pretty much all the games were close. Oh, wait, and they lost to the Bears. My mistake. Final week of the season. But this is still... I still believe in this team. I still think this is a good team. I just think... They need to reload a little bit on offense. And Josh Jacobs, at the end of the game, he said he wants to try to, talk some people to get them to come over to Green Bay. But, I kind of expected a little bit more from the Packers this year. It's just, the Eagles, they're one of the best teams in the NFC for a reason. They're just better. They're better defensively. And a difference maker on this team is Saquon Barkley. Now, again, I thought, for a guy that ran for over 100 yards, it was a pretty quiet day for him, honestly. But, no, they did just enough. Now, people are talking about Jalen Hurts. He was a little rusty, and I get it. But, look, the Eagles didn't have to, be great offensively to win this game. They were in full control from start to finish. In some of these other playoff games, when a team would take an early lead and then they would stall, well, at some point the other team is going to break through and you're going to have to answer that. The Eagles really never had to. I mean, I guess when Josh Jacobs, scored the touchdown, it was like, okay, they got to do something. And they did. And even before that, Packers get on the board, they kick a field goal to make it 10-3. Eagles go down the field, Dallas Goedert scores a touchdown. So they did what they had to do to win the game. Because I know there's some people in the media that think, oh, that wasn't a good performance. They're not going to be able to do that in the coming weeks. And you're right, because the competition is going to get better, but the Eagles' defense is really good. It's really good. I mean, they did a fabulous job revamping this defense in the offseason, in the draft and in free agency. And now they're going to be taking on a Rams team that they have played already. So we'll see what they do. Like I said, the competition is going to get tougher. I think the Rams are coming in with momentum. The defense is playing better. And, let's see how they deal with, that passing game with Puka Nacua. Cooper Kupp had a quiet night last night. We'll see what the status is of Tyler Higbee. Hopefully they get him back because he was looking good last night before he got hurt. But, that should be an interesting game. That'll be the first game on Sunday. But the Packers, they got some things that they're going to have to work on in the offseason. And like I said, I'm going to talk about Jordan Love in another show. I think tomorrow I'll get into him and his performance. And, I know, like I said, there's a lot of people that, are not, that are doubting him right now. And I will talk about that tomorrow and if that's justified. But, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Bills-Broncos game, how that game went, and where that leaves the Bills. Where are they going to? Where do they go from here? Well, this is where they're going to go. They're going to be playing the Ravens next week, which is going to be a huge game. That's going to be the game of the week. So, obviously, we won't preview that yet. We're going to wait till Friday, but that is where they're going to be. That's who they're going to be matching up with. But we'll get into the Bills-Broncos game and how that all unfolded. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Bills-Broncos game and how that game unfolded. The Bills, well, they pretty much dominated this game. Excluding the first drive by the Broncos, they win 31-7. And, excluding the first drive, because the Broncos got the ball to start the game, and they went up 7-0. Bo Nix hits Troy Franklin for that long touchdown, and you thought, okay, Broncos came to play today. And then from that point on, the Bills took over. And this was the game I was most intrigued by going into the weekend because, the Broncos were coming in with momentum, and, I wanted to see what this team had in them to take on the Bills in that environment, and Josh Allen, who is up for the MVP. And like I said, got off to a great start. But after that, the Bills took over, and they did not look back. And the Broncos were still in this game in the first half, even with, them only scoring 7 points. Now, they had an opportunity to score more. Brandon McManus, nope, not Brandon McManus, Will Lutz, sorry, McManus we talked about already, and former Bronco, I get it. But they had a chance to at least make it 10-10 going into the half. But Will Lutz, he ended up missing a 50-yard field goal. And it looked like it was going to go in, but, the wind was a factor here, and it just ended up hitting off the upright, and they ended up missing. And at that point, I thought, yeah, this is not looking good for the Broncos. But, yeah, so this is what happened after their first drive. They go up 7-0. The Bills, the Broncos defense did a great job. They held the Bills out of the end zone, held them to 3 points. So that was big. But then after that, Broncos punted. Bills scored a touchdown. That was a James Cook 5-yard touchdown to make it 10-7. But yeah, Broncos punted before that drive. They punted again and then a missed field goal. Then the Bills got the ball to start the second half. They kicked a field goal. Broncos punted. It was just all punts and turnover on downs. They actually only had 4 possessions in the second half. The Bills sustained drives. See, that's what I was saying about the Broncos. What the Broncos needed to do in this game was sustain drives. And they didn't do that. The Bills did. And they just pulled ahead and did not look back. You had Josh Allen connecting with Ty Johnson for a 24-yard touchdown. That was on 4th and 1. I don't know how Ty Johnson was able to stay in bounds. He caught the ball in the back of the end zone, and he was able to keep, his legs in bounds. Didn't touch out of bounds, I guess, until, he had possession of the ball. It was a great play by Josh Allen and a good catch by Ty Johnson. That ended up being a touchdown. They went for 2. They got it to Keon Coleman. And then you had the long touchdown to Curtis Samuel for 55 yards. And then they tacked on a field goal in the fourth quarter, and it was 31-7. Bo Nix went 13 of 22 for 144 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. They actually went for a fake punt, and they got it. That was it was in the first half. That was I forget when it happened, but you thought, okay, that was so it was 4th and 8. They went for it on 4th and 8 with the fake punt. This was in the second quarter, and they got it. 15-yard pass from Riley Dixon to Marvin Mims. So that got them into Bills territory, but they just couldn't really do anything with the ball after that, and there was no fake punt after that when they had to punt again. But yeah, Bo Nix went 13 of 22 for 144 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Like I said, Riley Dixon, he completed the 1 pass for 15 yards. Broncos only 79 yards rushing in this game. Bo Nix was their leading rusher. They just could not get anything going on the ground. They had, besides Bo Nix, you had 4 other players carry the ball at least once in the game. They just could not get anything going on the ground. And that was something important. That was something that they needed to establish in this game to try to slow it down a bit, this matchup, but it didn't happen. So that's one area that they're going to have to address in the offseason. Cortland Sutton, 5 receptions for 75 yards. There were some drop passes in this game. He had a drop in this game that he should have caught. Some other players as well had drops. And some of them could have led to interceptions too. But, they just that was a little bit of an issue. Broncos defense, 2 sacks of Josh Allen in this game, who went 20 of 26 for 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bills ran the ball for over 200 yards, 210 yards in total. James Cook had 120 yards on the ground. Josh Allen, 46 yards on the ground. Ty Johnson, 44 yards on the ground. Ray Davis actually got hurt in this game. He had 1 carry for 3 yards. Curtis Samuel, their leading receiver, 3 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir, 6 for 61, Dalton Kincaid, 3 for 47. Dawson Knox, 2 for 38. Bills defense, 2 sacks of Bo Nix in this game. You had in the game Teron Johnson. He got hurt in this game, one of their top corners, but he was able to come back in, so that was good to see that. But the Bills defense played well here, and like I said, they will be taking on the Ravens next week, which could be the game of the year. And the Bills, they had the ball for pretty much the whole game. They possessed the ball for over 41 minutes. You know how many? You know how long the Broncos possessed the ball for? 18 minutes. The Bills 26 first downs to the Broncos 13 first downs. Broncos went 2 for 9 on third down. Bills went 8 for 15. And the Broncos had 224 yards in total in this game. The Bills had almost 500. They had 471 yards. Broncos ran 42 plays. Bills ran 72. Yeah, the Bills, after that first drive by the Broncos that led to a touchdown, it was just all Bills. And again, not surprised by that. I mean, I was kind of hoping for the Broncos to be a little bit more competitive in this game, but it just didn't happen. The Bills are just the better team. They got the better quarterback. And Bo Nix, I think, has a bright future. I don't want to knock him by saying that, but right now Josh Allen is playing out of this world. And right now, nobody's stopping him until we get to, next week and maybe the week after. Because, you could make the argument, well, right now nobody's stopping Lamar Jackson. Well, one of them is going to stop the other. And then we'll see what happens in the other matchup between the Chiefs and the Texans. But odds are, whoever wins that, we will find out where whoever wins that game, where they'll be playing, because Texans-Chiefs is on Saturday. So, but listen, credit to the Broncos, though, for getting this far. I've said it multiple times over the last couple of weeks, giving them props. I did not expect them to make the playoffs this year. I didn't expect them to be that good of a team, but credit to Sean Payton. Bo Nix, got off to a little bit of a rough start to the season, but as the season progressed, he got better and better, and I do think the Broncos can build off of this season. And, there's some areas where they could definitely improve, more specifically on the offense. And I think once they do that, Bo Nix in year 2, they could find themselves back in the same situation. So the Broncos got a bright future ahead of them. So I know it didn't go the way they wanted it to in this game. I would have liked to have seen them be a little bit more competitive, but, that just didn't happen. The Bills right now, they're one of the top teams in the NFL. So this was a tall task to go in there and try to upset them. But some people thought they would. I just was not one of those people. I thought maybe they could keep it a little bit close, but that didn't happen either. So, yeah, they're going home. Bills, they move on. They will be hosting the Ravens. So we did see these two teams play each other earlier in the year, and the Ravens dominated that game in Baltimore. Derrick Henry had almost 200 yards rushing. So we'll see what happens in this matchup coming up, but I cannot wait for that game. That is going to be one heck of a matchup. The top 2 MVP candidates going at it, and we will preview that game on Friday. Maybe we sprinkle in, another topic before, we get into who I think is going to win, even though if you saw my video on my playoff bracket, you kind of know where I'm leaning towards. But either way, that game is going to be a great game, and I cannot wait for it. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about the Bills-Broncos game. What were your takeaways from it, and, any early thoughts on the Bills-Ravens game for Sunday, which, like I keep saying, I cannot wait for that game. That is going to be a lot of fun to watch that. So, we are going to take our final break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Texans-Chargers game. That's the final game that we have not gotten to yet. We will talk about that to finish off the show here, how that game unfolded. And, that'll take us to the end of the show. And, so make sure to stick around for one final time. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Texans-Chargers game and how that game unfolded. The Texans winning 32-12. And if you're a Justin Herbert fan, this was not a good performance by him. And the Chargers, the first two possessions, they went down the field. They kicked 2 field goals. I mean, the first drive of the game, it looked like, this was going to be their game. And then just after that, it was all downhill from there. Similar to what happened with the Broncos and the Bills game. But it took a little bit for the Texans offense to get it going. And look, I liked the Chargers in this game because I just was not impressed by what I was seeing from the Texans offense. But the turning point of the game for me was when C.J. Stroud on 3rd and 16. So there was a bobbled snap. He picks it up. He scrambles. And he's able to connect with Xavier Hutchinson for 34 yards. So I think at that, and the game was still 6-0. When that happened, I thought, all right, here we go. I think the Texans finally found it. And then you had Stroud connect with Nico Collins for 37 yards. And then later in the drive, he connected with Nico Collins for a 13-yard touchdown. And that's the one guy, if you're the Chargers, that you got to key in on because there's no Stephon Diggs, there's no Tank Dell. So, it's just, from that point on, then the Texans just took over the game. But to go back to the beginning of the game, the Chargers went 10 plays, 57 yards. They got down to the Houston 16, Cameron Dicker, a 35-yard field goal. He makes that. It's 3-0. Then it's funny. When I'm watching the game, I go, all right, let's see what Stroud can do on this drive. The first play of that drive, he hits John Mechie. Mechie ends up fumbling. Chargers recover it. Derwin James recovers it. And then the Chargers turn that into a field goal as well. Cameron Dicker, 39-yard field goal. And then it was a lot of punts. Then we had a C.J. Stroud interception trying to hit Mechie. He gets intercepted. That was on 3rd and 7. And this one, Justin Herbert was not great. Some of the interceptions were not entirely his fault. This one, I think, was. He's trying to hit Quinn Johnston. He ends up getting intercepted by Lassiter. Yeah, I would not have thrown that ball. But again, I'm acting like, I say that, what NFL experience do you have? But that just, I would not have done that. Now, that didn't hurt them at that point because then the Texans punted again. But it's just crazy how immediately after Stroud throws a pick, Herbert throws a pick. Because I thought when Stroud threw that pick, I'm like, all right, well, the Chargers should turn that into points and, make it 13-0. But that did not happen. Herbert throws a pick. 2 punts by both teams. And then, like I said, I brought this up already, the drive that led to the Nico Collins touchdown. And that was the turning point. Because then the Chargers, after that, they went 3 and out very quickly. Very quickly. And then the Texans were able to get a field goal before the end of the half. And the key play on that drive was a 27-yard scramble by C.J. Stroud. So Fairbairn kicked a 41-yarder, and that made it 10-6. Then the Texans, they fumbled to open up the second half. They got down to the Chargers' 24-yard line, and Joe Mixon, he ends up fumbling the ball, recovered by Tony Jefferson. So the Chargers, now they got a chance here. All right, get the momentum back. They go for it on 4th and 2. Herbert connects with Quinn Johnston, but he is just short of the first down. Only gains 1 yard on the play. Oh, actually, no. The pass ended up being incomplete. They ruled that it was incomplete. So they didn't gain anything on that play. And then the Texans turned that into a field goal. Stroud actually got intercepted by Derwin James. But, there was an unnecessary roughness penalty on Joe Mixon. But, so the pass ended up being incomplete. So it wasn't a pick by Derwin James. Because what happened was he tried to hit Dalton Schultz, and it looked like a great interception. And Derwin James actually returned it, but I was like, even if he did pick it off, he should have been ruled down, which he probably would have been. But you did see that the ball hit the ground. So Texans maintained possession, but then there was another penalty. They had a holding. So they went from 1st and 10 to 1st and 15, then 2nd and 30, and then there was another penalty. That made it 2nd and 30. Well, actually, no, this was on the Chargers. Joey Bosa was offsides, so that made it 2nd and 35. They were able to get into field goal range, and Fairbairn kicked a 37-yard field goal. So that made it 13-6. Chargers punted again, -2 yards on that drive. But then the Texans punted, and then Herbert threw a pick six to Eric Murray, a 38-yard pick six, and that made it 20-6 at that point. And you knew, yeah, this game is wrapped up. Chargers aren't coming back. But then on the next drive, Herbert throws another pick. Now this one, I don't put blame on him. Will Dissly's got to catch that. Derek Stingley ended up picking it off the ricochet, and he returned that 54 yards. I thought Herbert was about to throw back-to-back pick sixes, and that didn't happen. But still, back-to-back interceptions. Fairbairn turned that into a field goal, 30-yarder, made it 23-6. But then this was one of the lone bright spots of Herbert's day. He hits Ladd McConkey on 3rd and 26. That could have got picked off, but he threaded the needle there. Nobody behind Ladd McConkey, and he takes it 86 yards for a touchdown. They go for 2. And what happens, actually, no. They go for the extra point. It ends up getting blocked. So what Cameron Dicker does is, when it comes down, he knocks it to the ground. The Texans, they pick it up, and they return it for 2. So that made it 25-12 instead of 23-13. So then after that, the Texans scored a touchdown. Mixon, 17-yard touchdown on 4th and 1. And then Herbert threw one final pick to end the game. That was to Derek Stingley. And that's all she wrote. For the Texans, C.J. Stroud, wasn't bad. 22 of 33, 282 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Joe Mixon, 106 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Nice to see him getting it going finally, because it's been a few weeks since he's had a big game, and that the Texans are going to need him, especially in this divisional matchup with the Chiefs. I thought something that got maybe a little bit overlooked is C.J. Stroud, 42 yards rushing in this game. I thought the scrambles that he had in this game were key, because they helped the Texans get points on the 2 drives to end the first half, because he had the big scramble, I think. At least to set up one of the Fairbairn field goals. But the 42 yards, I think, gets overlooked. I think that's key. I think that's something that C.J. Stroud is going to have to do a little bit more, is use his legs, in my opinion. And then the leading receiver, of course, was Nico Collins. He had 7 receptions for 122 yards and a touchdown. Again, that's the one guy that the Chargers had to make sure did not hurt them. And he did. He did. But yeah, you had John Mechie and Joe Mixon fumbling the football. Stroud did fumble the ball, but, turned that 3rd and 16 broken play into, a positive gain, and that changed the momentum of the game. Derek Stingley, 2 interceptions. Lassiter had 1, and Eric Murray as well had 1 as well. That was the pick 6. Texans defense, 4 sacks of Justin Herbert in the game. And speaking of Justin Herbert, 14 of 32 for 242 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. Chargers really could not run the ball in this game. J.K. Dobbins, 9 carries for 26 yards. Ladd McConkey, though, he had a playoff game for the ages, though. 9 receptions for 197 yards and a touchdown. And the Chargers defense, 3 sacks of C.J. Stroud. But, yeah, the Texans defense, they got after Justin Herbert. And they just really, after the first couple of drives, the blown play to McConkey for the touchdown, the Texans defense was locked down the whole game. The Chargers just could not get anything going, but also because Justin Herbert turned the ball over. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say all the picks were not his fault, but I think especially the Will Dissly one, I mean, the receivers got to catch that. There were some drops in this game as well, but yeah, Justin Herbert did not play well. And everybody's all over him as well. He has been getting destroyed on social media by his performance. It was not good. It was not good. And, like I said, when C.J. Stroud converts that 3rd and 16, that changed the game. That changed the momentum of the game. And, it didn't give the Texans defense enough credit, because that's the real reason why they won, is their defense. Stroud on the offense did just enough to win the game. They made plays. Nico Collins, like I said, had a big game. He's a very underrated receiver. And Joe Mixon, ran the football. But what this Texans defense was able to do to shut down a Chargers team that was coming in with momentum, they were playing better than the Texans at before this game, and that's why a lot of people were picking them. And that's when I knew that it wasn't going to be good for the Chargers. When everybody was picking the Chargers, You had Rex Ryan saying that the Chargers were on a bye week because they were going to be playing the Texans. I knew they were in trouble, and yeah, that's how the game unfolded. So the Texans, they move on. They will be taking on the Chiefs, and the Chargers go home. And we will talk more about Justin Herbert and his performance as well, because again, social media destroyed him. He's not looking good. But you know what? The Chargers, not a lot of people expected them to make the playoffs. They were kind of ahead of schedule. There's just some revamping that they're going to have to do. And, this team is going to be good next year. They just need to add more to that offense. I mean, Mike McCarthy was unbelievable. And he had a solid rookie year. Was great in this playoff game. Almost 200 yards receiving. And he's a rookie. They gotta add more playmakers to the offense. They couldn't run the football either. And that was something that they were able to do a lot this year with J.K. Dobbins, but just not in this game. And kind of made them one-dimensional, and that led to a lot of interceptions. So, yeah, the Texans, that was a big boost for them, boosted confidence, and now they'll take on the Chiefs, who they did play recently, a little over around a month ago. Already, I can't believe that. So we'll see, what they have in store for this rematch with the Chiefs. Chargers, like I said, this is going to be a good team. Jim Harbaugh did a great job this year, and, they'll be back. But also, the last thing I wanted to bring up is Justin Herbert had 3 picks the whole year. He had 4 on Saturday. That's unbelievable. But yeah, it's gonna be a long off season for him, and hopefully he bounces back because he is a good player. But we'll get into more of that tomorrow because I wanted to talk about him and Jordan Love because, like I said, they're both getting crushed on social media. So that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the video. And, so until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.